All right, a couple more identities to learn here. Let's learn some sum and difference identities. I didn't bother to type them up because you don't have to memorize them. The reason you don't have to memorize them is because of this beautiful document right here called the Regents Reference Guide. So, take a moment, pause the video, jot these identities down. These are the functions of the sum of two angles and the functions of the difference of two angles. So just take a moment and jot these things down so you can refer to them. Again, these are identities that are given to you on the Regents exam, so there's no reason to memorize them. You just need to know how to apply them. So let's jot these things down and then we're going to apply them in this fashion. Let's find the exact value of the sine of 75. A couple of things to consider. We see the word exact. Now what that's telling me is that I'm working with 30, 60, or 45. Those are the only values that I know. The special right triangle values 30, 60, 90, 45, 45, 90, and exact means we're working with either 1/2, radical 3 over 2, radical 2 over 2, any combinations of those three fractions. So now, sine of 75, the problem is that I don't know the value of the sine of 75. So I'm going to have to try to determine ways I can calculate 75 using these angle measures. Well, if we were to use 30 and 45, then maybe we don't need to know the sine of 75. Maybe we could say, hold on a second, not the sine of 75, let's say the sine of 30 plus 45. And that's where the sum and difference identities come from. So now we'll have to copy the formula for the sine of the sum of two angles. Okay, so let's move this down a little bit. And let's copy the sine of the sum of two angles. So the sine of A plus B, sine A cosine B, cosine A sine B. The sine of A plus B is equal to sine A cosine B plus cosine A sine B. Just double check that. Sine A cosine B, cosine A sine B. Good. With a sum in the middle. All right, so in this case, angle A is 30 and angle B is 45. So I'm just going to plug in wherever I see an A, 30, wherever I see a B, 45. So the sine of 30, the cosine of B, 45, plus the cosine of A is 30, so the cosine of 30, times the sine of B, which is 45. Now these are values that I memorized. Sine of 30 is half, and the cosine of 45 is radical 2 over 2. Cosine of 30 is radical 3 over 2, and the sine of 45 is radical 2 over 2. And now we're just going to have to clean this thing up. 1 times radical 2 is radical 2 over 4. And radical 3 times radical 2 is radical 6, and I have a common denominator of 4 here. So there we go. No way I can combine them. The radicands are not the same. I can't simplify either of them, and I can't cancel because that's not a radical at all. So this is simplest form, which means the exact value of the sine of 75 is radical 2 plus radical 6 over 4. Let's do another example. Let's calculate the exact value of the cosine of 45. Again, I see the word exact. That's telling me that I can only use fractions which come from angles of 30, 45, and 60. So now I have to think, how can I create 15 degrees from these? Well, I'm going to use these here and I'm going to subtract them. So I'm going to say the cosine of not 15, I'm going to say 45 minus 30. So now I'm going to have to copy the cosine difference of two angles formula. So let's take a look. Cosine of A minus B is equal to cosine A cosine B plus sine A sine B. So cosine A minus B is equal to cosine A cosine B plus sine A sine B. So let's see. Let's plug in wherever we can. Now angle A is 45 and angle B is 30. So cosine of 45 times the cosine of 30 plus the sine of 45 times the sine of 30. And these are values that I know. Cosine of 45 is radical 2 over 2. And the cosine of 30 is radical 3 over 2. Plus, the sine of 45 is also radical 2 over 2 times the sine of 30 is a half. So radical 3 times radical 2 is radical 6. They're both going to have the denominator 4, so I'm just going to combine the fractions right away. And then radical 2 times radical 1 is radical 2. So the cosine of 15, the exact value of the cosine of 15 is radical 6 plus radical 2 over 4. And that's how you apply sum and difference identities.